Okay, so welcome back to episode number three, Akshay.
Thank you, thank you.
Uh, Last episode we spoke about airlines. We went a lot of off topic. Spoke about Squid Games. We
Hmm.
spoke about bureaucracy in airline industries, how bad it is to actually run one. Like, I mean, how ultra difficult it is to do, and how much balls you need to get it running. Right?
Money,
So
money.
money, money, money. Vitamin M. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, what were your thoughts from the last conversation?
So, so as you may know by now, of course, you know by now that I approach everything with a technical perspective,
Hmm.
and because we mentioned about electric aircrafts and all yesterday, and we spoke
Yeah.
about the science behind them. I mean, partially, and the economics behind them partially. It got me thinking at night about all of the whole concept of electric aircrafts and how they'll change the aviation industry. And all the dreams I had last night, at least the ones that I remember, mostly solidified my belief in the whole electric future and how it's going to be a revolutionary thing. It's not going to be like today's airplanes being replaced by electric airplanes. It's going to be a very different thing because I think sometime this year there was a flying car which was tested, right, and it was successfully tested. It was doing well on the road. Didn't look like a flying car in any way. I mean, didn't look like a car in any way, but it was still
Yeah.
doing well on the road. It was flying. It landed wherever it wanted to, provided we had given a road as thick as its wingspan. But but I think when vehicles also, so this is what we didn't add yesterday, which was that when vehicles also start going in the air and not only staying in the road, then the whole air transport thing becomes a different story. It doesn't remain um, uh, fixated only on airplanes. It'll be a very different industry. We can talk about that sometime later. But I think what inspired today's topic was when we brought up the topic of how Squid Games was brought into the industry in a very different way this time by Netflix and how it did really well. So that's what I think we're going to talk about today. And I mean, what we're going to
That
talk, I
and
think,
a multitude. So a few months back, I saw this news article where they were talking about the K-pop band. Okay, BTS. Yes, finally I remember. So the BTS band,
yeah,
apparently
I
they
said
are
I said
now.
behind the scenes for a reason, dude.
Okay, okay, okay. I didn't catch one.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Okay, so the BTS gang, the all seven guys, they became the Korean diplomats to the UN. Okay, like they were
What?
issued the diplomatic passports to them. Okay,
Okay.
that got me thinking about this weird conspiracy. So the Americans actually believe that anime and hentai is actually a revenge uh, cultural phenomenon that Japan is using to punish Americans for dropping nuclear bombs. Okay, atomic bombs. Sorry, not nuclear.
Like
So
revenge in what
yeah, yeah.
way?
So see, they know that they cannot fire another missile on US because there's going to be a lot of sanctions and stuff, and they're not that powerful, right?
Yeah.
So they thought, okay, why not make these Americans addicted to our anime and how large our characters have boobs? Okay, it's a running theory. It's a running conspiracy theory. They kind of believe it. They're like, okay, these
Okay.
guys, yeah, they've hooked us up with all this anime and like the Comic Con is very huge, especially
Mhm.
in US. Like if you ignore the Japanese comic culture, right? The next best place to go is the US. Right? If you want to be a part of some comic fandom, that's the place. That is one of their theories. Along with that, I understood that BTS has such huge following, right? I think they have around 25 million people following them, and this is across the globe. Like even like you might have had some female friends who are very fangirling about BTS. They like these Korean boys a lot. Uh, so they're so culturally influential that them getting the diplomatic passport shouldn't be a surprise to some people. Like
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
before, like, in 2019, apparently they went to the UN, the branch that takes care of children's education and their welfare, UNESCO, right? So they represented Korea over there. They spoke a lot about child care and child labor, abuse, right? So all these things. And like in 2021, they get the diplomatic passport to represent Korea in the UN assembly, right? So
yeah,
I don't know if it is for UN assembly, but it was the diplomatic passport for representation in UN.
all right.
So I was thinking, like, are there any Indian celebrities who got such status? Not many people.
Yeah,
At max, they were just ambassadors. That's it, and they were not that influential. Like, I think I can only think about Shah Rukh Khan to some extent, but the other people who represented, they didn't have much power in terms of pulling in the crowd, right? I think
yeah, no way.
only BTS can do that as of now. I don't know of any other cultural figure who can do the same thing.
True.
Yeah, so this was one of the things that came up in my mind yesterday during our conversation.
Just to add to this, I think this is the same case as Hollywood celebrities being famous across the globe and Bollywood celebrities being famous only in India. Right? So
yeah,
and I think it's the same with BTS because it's a huge, I mean, I've never listened to a single BTS song, but I know the response from people I get if I diss about them at any point. So I don't know what it is about them, but I do know that they have a huge fan following up to the point where only Koreans being their fans was a decade ago, I think. And how old is BTS? I have no clue. But
pretty old, I guess. It's around 5-6 years old. But then why certain people actually admire them? Like, not exactly I admire, but appreciate the hard work that they put into, right? I was one of the people who continuously dissed K-pop. Okay? At least not publicly, but somewhere in private, if I spoke to a friend and they're just fangirling about K-pop, I would be like, dude, they're not that great. Okay, just be quiet. And then I was actually like, okay, what is K-pop in general, right? So I just watched a YouTube video, just one video, right? Just to understand what is the context. Apparently, you start off as a normal dancer, like a background dancer. हमारा जो Indian movies में background dancers होते हैं, like suddenly everybody on beat, same step, everyone, right? It's not like that sudden flash mob. It's just like that. Okay, so these guys are dancing in that. They get trained for at least 8 to 9 years, only as a background dancer. There's no scope at all.
Okay.
And if you get picked up by a scout, like an industry scout, like somebody, let's say, for example, as influential as T-Series, okay, they find you, they look at your face cut. If you fit into a particular stereotype, they'll hire you, they'll make a band out of you. They'll like select 5-6 people. Now you're a band. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's when their life flips. Suddenly they have the stardom. And I wouldn't say that, it's like random chance of luck. Okay, but like they put in so much of effort, and
they have to be good.
They have to be extremely good, right? And if you don't get picked by the scout after 8 to 9 years, you don't have anything else to do.
True.
Right? So, okay, that's where it ties up to Squid Games. So apparently Squid Games is about the, economic difference between the uppermost class and the lowermost class of Korean society.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what happens even in K-pop. Like if you fail in that 8 to 9 years, at the end of it, you're going to be remaining, like you're going to go back to ground zero. You can either go all the way up, become a band which is internationally known, or you just fall down the ladder. That's it. Your career is done. So yeah, this is how I want you to tie it up. I don't know how it came across to you.
Pretty harsh. But I think comparatively, the number of people, because we have a larger population in India, I'm pretty sure the number of people who've been trying to act all their lives and then go to Mumbai for their dream acting breakthrough and never make it. I think the number that we have in India is still bigger than the people that you mentioned, right? I was saying the number of people that we have in India who go to Mumbai for their dream acting breakthrough and never make it. I think that number is still much bigger than the number of people that you mentioned in Korea who try to be in the background of a show or something and then try to become a band. But I, I don't know how to frame this, but I think what I saw of in Squid Games, at least, was that Korea as a place to live is a lot more structured than India is. India is a very uh, it's a very Minecraft like world where you can create whatever you want out of nothing, out of basically bare scratch. Whereas I think in
Right.
Korea, at least you've got a lot more structure in the cities. And I mean, and just to add to this, I think the structure of living is the only reason Korea and Japan, being such tiny countries, are doing so well in the global economy. It's because uh, the basic way of living is sorted for most people who can do some work and earn some money. For them, the basic way of living is sorted so that they can think of and do more productive things compared to, say, an Indian man who spends, say, 65-70% of his life just basically creating a place to stay. By what I'm saying by that is 65-75% of their life earning for and creating a place to stay, and then the other 30 go in retirement. Whereas I think if you're educating people in a way, if you're educating students, kids in a way that they don't have to think much about lifestyle. That's because lifestyle is sorted, right? So if you're educating them in a way where they don't have to think about lifestyle, then I think every person can actually use his brain to do something more productive than think of, settling down, which is what the theme is in India. I was just adding that up. I just had something else come up while we were just talking about while we were just revising about Squid Games, which was that how big of a power move do you think was it to add a Hindi speaking character in the game in the series?
Uh, there's the fact that there was a guy in brown skin in
Mhm.
a phenomenon such as Squid Games.
Hmm.
It kind of uh, gave that exposure for South Asian countries. Like,
True.
देखो भाई हमारा पास भी talent है. It's not just Imran Khan or like that Slumdog Millionaire ka hero.
Hmm.
Not just that. We have plenty more. You better start hiring, right?
True.
Uh, or like better start looking at least. You don't have to compel yourself to hire the brown guys, but at least it's a good idea to look for them at least. Like just look for them, get an audition done at least, right? Because uh, I think movies can be made a little more flavorful if you add a lot of characters from different backgrounds,
Hmm.
if the script demands as such, right? I'm not saying make every script with full of flavor, bring everybody, the Arab guys, the brown guys from South Asia, everyone. No, that's stupid. That's
Hmm.
radically left.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I think you should
if the
stick.
script, yeah. So stories like James Bond, right? James Bond is a white guy. Just let him be. Now I won't say why
There were so
I'm
many
taking this topic
theories.
out right now, but
There were so many theories
see, that's
about
the
this.
problem. No, we can't talk about these topics openly. The world has come to a place where, like, if you have a disagreement, no, I'm offended. You know what I'll
Yeah.
say? You're offended, so what? Fuck you.
But yeah, we can't do that in India though.
At least I want to change that thing. Probably bring in a more disciplined discourse, right? Because most of the India has forgotten what it means to debate. all you see is "Pusta hai Bharat," or like,
Yeah.
India wants to know if it goes to
Yeah.
an English translation.
That.
That's it. And like they keep barking. And the only debate show that I've enjoyed so far, at least when I was old enough to understand what exactly is a debate, right? Apart from the school setting where you're just giving pointers and like your other buddy is giving 2 pointers and like they decide, okay, this team won. Okay, that's not how debates work. So I watched India Conclave. It's hosted by Times of India. Amazing show. Every year, I think they run it for 3-4 days. They bring in defense ministers, finance ministers, chief ministers of different states. Uh, they pitch them against social justice warriors, uh, liberal historians, the modern, postmodern historians. Everybody is there in that one particular place for 3 days, and they debate. Of course, there's a time constraint. Like each person gets only five minutes every time he or she is asked a question. But the level of discipline that all of them have, right? Even then, there are some weird people who just keep shouting at such a prestigious opportunity, right? But the discipline and the way they actually show what is debating, what it actually looks like is awesome. You need to watch at least one video, maybe a clip. I know you don't watch almost anything related to debates, but
yeah, I don't. There is a reason why I don't watch anything related to debates, at least in India. It's because all the, are they called debatees? But all the people who are participating in the debate, right? They forget the whole panelist. Fine. Wow. Okay. So all the panelists, they forget the point of the whole debate, probably in the first 10-15% of the whole debate. And instead of talking about the topic and about what they think is right or wrong, everyone, because we've got a huge population, and that's why we've got a lot of panelists, like 7-8 of them, and they're given like 5 minutes. Everyone just wants to be heard, right? It's not about what they're saying, it's about who's got the loudest voice. It's about it's I don't know if it's the television time that they get and they want to make the most out of it. But so that's what I don't find great about debates here. The thing with debates is, what I think how debate should be is, if the two of us are having a debate, I should at least listen to what you're saying, right? But in almost 100% of Indian debates, it's like there's a topic and I'm going to start screaming about what I think is right, and then my time is up, and then you'll start screaming about what you think is right. You'll not give a damn about what I'm saying. You just want to say, even if we're saying the same thing, we'll still scream it out because media. So yes,
that's that 2-3 second extra time on TV. And then later you can come back at the night, Mummy, dekho main TV mein.
Yes. So yeah, so that's what I don't. That's why I've just given up on the whole debate culture here, at least. And so I mean, I'll just give you an example. It's a tiny example. So there was this job training in college, right, where they were basically training you to how to be hired for a job, which was in third year of college. And all my classmates were there. There were people from other classes as well. So there was about 100 of us, and it was like, I think, a 10-hour session from morning to evening, a continuous 10-hour session with like something. It was fun. It was like all fun and games and small games and small like they would make teams of like 7-8 people, and then they would choose one person to represent them and talk that way, right? So so they had a debate, and obviously because a lot of people struggled with English, let's just be honest, I was one of the panelists there, right? Because I was unanimously chosen. Haan, tu ja raha hai. I was there, and so I was there, and no kidding, okay, this is not something you have to debate about, but the debate was about should no are packaged foods like chips and biscuits bad for kids, right? And yeah, and there was a sorting system where the people who spoke for or against was decided by the person who was hosting the debate, right? So what he did was he selected 7 people who spoke against it. They were like, in the sense that they had to prove that they're not bad for kids, right? And
Okay.
it was three, one of which was me, to say that yes, they're bad, right? So it is so freaking easy for me to like just shut all of them up at any point in time. And and the time of the debate was 3 minutes only, and there were 12 panelists. So you can imagine the amount of shouting that would have taken place in the whole process. So the three out of the three people that were selected who were selected to speak for the whole topic, the only person who could actually communicate was me. Okay, the other two they were pretty shy because we were just unanimously selected. And randomly the other seven who were supposed to speak against it, they're like, no, like they're not bad. They were all like the loudest people I'd ever met. Okay, and for some reason they were screaming their hearts out about, yes, they're good, they're so nutritious, and they're like the sodium, and I mean, yeah, they got to some points where there was sodium in them, sodium's good. And so and because I knew that I had to make the last point, because fine, I saw these 9 people scream their hearts out about random things just because they wanted to be heard. Like 2-3 people started speaking first, start talking, and then the other 5 got FOMO, and then they started screaming about random things. I'm talking about things which are not even related to the topic. They're just screaming their hands out because this all of this was scored for all the 12 teams, right? And then like I finished the whole debate, and like my team won because I spoke for the last 20 seconds only. But what I'm trying to say is the whole mentality in India is, if you're put in a circle, because the theme there was, you are sitting in this group discussion in a company's interview, and whoever is going to be heard is going to win, is going to be selected by the company, right? Which is what I think the mentality about all the panelists and everyone in India is, that if you're the loudest and if you can scream for the longest, which means that you'll occupy the most amount of time in the whole debate, you're going to win. Which is, I don't think, which is the right way for them to proceed. But that, I mean, that's something wrong with our education system, and we can't do anything about it yet.
I want to add 2 things here, right? One is, like, in college, right, we had campus placement, and I was going through the interview process for First American, right? It's I forgot what company it was, like what they were doing. Apparently very prestigious, right? They were looking for Android developers, and they told us that there are 3 rounds of interview, right? One is aptitude test, if you clear that. Then we have group discussion. Third round is a one-on-one session with their associates, right? Aptitude test, I kid you not, okay, this is how I wrote the aptitude test. They're like huge 5-6 sheets of aptitude MCQs, right? I just tick. Whatever I knew, I ticked it because they told clearly negative marking is there, right? So I just left the questions where I was not sure what the answers were. I think I answered, there were probably 36 or 40 questions. Out of that, I answered only 20. I even forgot how many I got right. Then how many of us? Around 300 students had applied for this, right? So they went through the aptitude test. We just sat in the auditorium. Me and Zain were sitting next to each other. We're like, "Bhai, हमारा नाम नहीं आएगा." Like, चलो हम यहाँ से निकल जाते. Okay, but the doors were closed. No, they wanted the entire process to be, what do you say, experienced. So the teachers were not letting us go, although our self-esteem was like dirt level, right? And then the main guy who came for the hiring from First American, their representative, is like, I'm very disappointed from your college. I won't name my college for now. So he's very disappointed in the way that we wrote our aptitude test. And then he mentions, like, again, we had also clearly said that negative marking is there. That means you should have avoided answering questions which you didn't know anyways. Okay. So I was laughing. Zain is laughing. He was sitting next to me, so he copied whatever I wrote. Right?
Oh no, man.
Yeah, pick it up.
I'm not answering this. No. Vedantu.
Oh shit.
Asking us to study.
Is that because of your sister?
Yeah.
So Yeah, Zain was sitting next to me. He had copied the literally same answers as me. Probably he attended a 2-3 more questions of his own choice, right? So we waited. This guy is calling out people. I think he had shortlisted only 30 people based on how much marks that they had got. Apparently, out of all my toppers from all the 3 batches of classes that were combined to form that 300 students, I was one of those top 30, or like the bottom 30 who was lucky enough to get
Only
my
30.
only 30 who answered right answers. Okay, I wouldn't say I was really good compared to others, but I was able to answer most of the answers.
The only 30 who didn't answer the wrong answers. You didn't, because you didn't have to.
Yes, correct. Right? So we answered that and they told us, okay, abhi group discussion chalega. And we are like, bhai dekho, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, I was hungry. Zain is like, bro, I'm leaving. Mera naam nahi aaya, to main ja raha hu. And I was hungry anyways. I asked them like, how long this is going to take. He said, 1 hour max. We'll take one group at a time and then get it done. So 8 of us were batched, like 8 in a group, 8 in a group, 8 in a group. Each group was called into a room for a discussion. Right. So it was our turn, my group's turn. We go in there, and it was clear instructions. So he said, "We'll give you one topic. It's about ozone layer and greenhouse gas effect. How can we, like, what are the constructive ways on which we can make sure that this greenhouse gases are emitted almost to zero, right? Zero sum game." That was the thing. He said, each one of you will get your time to talk. Just make 2-3 sentences, like put your point across, and then ask the next person to talk or like to add some values, right? Be what do you say, disciplined, right? Give the mic to the next guy. I was like the third guy from the start to talk about this. The first guy stands up. He's like, yeah, greenhouse gases are very harmful for the nature. Ozone layer is getting depleted and all this thing. He gave this big lecture of what is actually greenhouse gases.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the manager is like, acha, time over. Next guy. So the mic goes to the next guy. He picks up the mic. He's like, greenhouse gases are emitted from so and so devices. That is why we have to stop production of these products itself, and only that's the only thing. And then he makes 3 or more arguments, and he closes his argument. I got the mic and I said, "Look, the topic was how are we going to constructively come out of this phase?" Okay, so here are some of my things. Maybe we can shift towards CFL bulbs and all that stuff. I just gave constructive points. That was what was asked by the team. They didn't ask you what is the history of greenhouse gases. They didn't ask about what is happening to ozone layer. He just said, look, there's a problem. Give me 3 steps in which I can walk towards a solution. That's it. I gave those 3 answers. I just sat down. Okay. Rest, everybody just barked. Even after me, people started talking about random things. From greenhouse gases, it went to aircraft. It went to space technology. Apparently, they want to stop launching satellites. Okay. So my point was, in our schools, right, when we are taught on how to debate, our teachers never really tell us how to stick to a particular point.
Are we taught about how to debate?
At least from our experience, at least in Chinmaya, we were told to at least debate. Just debate, okay? I don't know.
That's a debatable topic. I don't think we were.
Okay.
I don't remember ever being taught in school or in college about how to debate or how to do a group discussion at any point.
We were only allowed to debate. We were never taught how to debate. They just told us, okay, look, first row and second row is one team. Third row, fourth row, one team.
Yeah, now debate. But they basically made 15 people in one team. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we did have some debates, but were we ever taught how to debate, how to go about initiating a debate, or how to go about closing a debate, or how to actually argue a topic? We were never taught about all of that. And I would say that we studied in one of the best schools in India, right? At least education wise. And I mean, if it didn't happen with us, it's obviously not happening to everyone else. about teaching them how to
Hmm.
debate. So what happens is all of these other people learn to debate from the media, watching people from the media, and that's not the best way to
Yeah.
learn to debate, because those are not the best
Hmm.
example. Because those people have now not even been educated, man. I'm just being honest here. So yeah, that's why I don't believe
And
in debates.
people forget that when you're called upon to a debate, right,
Hmm.
you're not necessarily called upon to make fun of the other person who has a disagreement with you, right? You can
Hmm.
make fun about his opinion
Yeah.
related to the same topic. Like you
Hmm.
can roast them based on their own factual, what do you say, unstable factual, whatever,
Hmm.
right? So whatever that opinion stands upon. But you cannot do this ad hominem attacks where you're like, says the guy who's fat, says the guy who's short. We used to do that in
Yeah.
school.
These,
I remember doing this to some of our school friends. I'm not very proud of it now that I think about. But yeah, we were just what 12, 13-year-old kids did. Like,
yeah.
what can you expect from us?
Hmm.
Yeah, so there are some of these soft skills that are not taught properly. Although the schools, even now, if they do try to make these parents believe that their kids are being taught about certain soft skills, but
Hmm.
not much. It's on very surface level. Forget surface. It's just touching the uppermost atoms on a surface. That's it. It's not even
Yeah.
touching.
Yeah. Barely.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't think we're
And
taught soft skills in school. We learn soft
and
skills in school, but we're not taught them.
we just thought, देखो आपको polite होना है, पेरेंट मम्मी पापा का बात मानना है,
इंग्लिश में बात करना है at all times,
इंग्लिश में बात करना है at all times.
which is only some
If you
schools
talk in
which
any other,
mandate that.
yeah, and if you talk in any other language, you are fined for 2 rupees, 1 rupee, 5 rupees. Oh God.
Our school was cheap
Those
that way. But the thing is, mandating to only communicate in English is not a mandate in all schools too. It was just our school which mandated that, and that's obviously helped us a lot.
right. To some extent, I guess.
Yeah.
And like, see, I was in the same school even before you joined, right?
Hmm.
And back then itself, I remember we didn't have a problem of majority of the students talking only in Kannada or only in Hindi.
Hmm.
Like students were talking in English only when it is during the session. Like if a
Hmm.
class is going on, everybody talks in English because how else are you going to communicate about whatever is being taught, right? But once you have a break of 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or lunch break, what do you expect from a kid? Though, like he's going to talk in whatever language he or
Yeah.
she is comfortable in, right? So yeah, that's one thing. And the most important aspect about schools is there's no freedom of thought, right?
As much
I'll
as
give you
they
an
like
example.
to, as much as they like to portray that your child is allowed to think in all directions and have a very broad mind, yeah, obviously there's no freedom of thought.
So
Because before you continue, I would just say that instead of telling a kid that you are free to think broad, instead of doing that, I think giving them activities which makes them think broader is more important than letting them know that you can think broad, because they don't have any concept of being broad-minded.
right.
Yeah.
And so why I was saying this is a lot of times when we were studying history and civics, I used to wonder, like, if not for non-violence, right? If not for Mahatma Gandhi or whatever was in his what do you say, in his bandwagon of people who chose non-violence over violence, or these extremely violent way of getting freedom. There's a difference between freedom being given to Indians and Indians taking their freedoms from British hands, right? So there were two struggles going on at the same time. There was Subhash Chandra Bose, who was sitting in Japan, who was going to Nazi Germany, asking for Indians to give support. Like Indians were outside India, and he's asking them to come back to India and fight for freedom, right? With arms, if necessary. He never said, just let's go kill. Or to my best understanding, he never said, let's kill the Britishers. No.
Yeah.
He just said, let's pick up arms, let's show them what we've got. Okay.
Let's rebel.
And then we have
mostly.
Gandhi, rebel, right? And we have Gandhi and his friends who are just sitting on the roads, they're doing fasting, trying to fight the good fight and all these things. So I always wanted to ask our teachers which was better, or which should have been a better outcome for India. Like, because we chose the path of non-violence, this is where we are. So I wanted to ask them, if we had chosen the Subhash Chandra way, if he was not assassinated, or in that conspiracy theory of him being assassinated in a flight crash, what would have happened? What is that alternate thing? And teachers would just brush it off. They're like, oh, since he's dead, we don't know. Let's not talk about it. Let's get it. I have a syllabus to complete. Right? Either teachers are actually scared to talk about these topics, or they're just happy to get their salary for whatever they are instructed to teach students.
We all know which one it is, but we're not going to comment.
Okay. See, there is no absolute free speech. Even if we want to talk, we are held back, right? But if we were US citizens, we would be like, I have my First Amendment. I'll talk openly and freely whatever I want. You have nothing to do about it. As long as I don't incite violence, I have the amendment, right? And I also wondered why India doesn't have First Amendment. Okay. Now, this is a topic that I wanted to talk to you about in the previous episode. I just wanted to slide it in, but we didn't have enough time. So, okay. Who was ruling India before 1945? Tell me.
1945.
It's the most before 1945. Who was ruling India? Like, who had the most control?
East India Company? No.
Yeah, like they were East India Company till 1857, like before the revolt, and after that they were like, okay, if we are going to rule India as a company, it's not going to work. We have to bring India under British Crown. Okay, so the Queen is now in charge, and effectively the British government is taking care of India. Right now, when they wanted to leave India, by our Indic civilization, like by the influence of our culture, we were normally questioning even God, and that's why atheists had a place in society, even though majority of people living in India were Hindus before the Turkic invasion also. Okay, so in Hindu culture, we don't kill atheists. We don't call them infidels. Idol worship is different. Buddhism and Jainism is separate schools of thought. They are not different religion. First of all, the Britishers don't understand what is the meaning of dharma. Okay, that's a different concept. Like most of the Sanskrit words for them, it's just black and white for them, but it's a huge gray area. If you ask a proper Sanskrit scholar what is the meaning of dharma, it's like a one paragraph meaning. Okay, that like, they try to compress all that. They're like, dharma is equal to religion. Okay? Let's not go into that, but
let's not go into that, because I'll be as blank as the Britishers.
So the British are like, okay, we just came out of World War, right? Okay, we're still fighting World War. Now it's coming to a close, and it's better we leave India, right? But before we leave, we need to make sure that these people don't end up being very angry, because they've seen, like, they know people like Subhash Chandra Bose is there, Bhagat Singh, all these proper revolutionaries, right? These guys are not as calm and pacifist as Mahatma Gandhi. So they knew, if we leave, if we give India the proper independence, these guys are going to bite us back. So they said, fine, we will help you draft your constitution, right? We will hand over freedom to you. Okay. And then we will leave after 2 years. They're like, cool. They start drafting the constitution, and in the constitution it's mentioned freedom of expression, right? It's a fundamental right of every Indian citizen. But if you read the subclause, it's written, if your freedom of expression, right, incites violence, or if it's going to create public
outrage,
disturbance, or if it's a threat to national security, or if you're going to talk about some topic which can create enmity between neighboring countries, you can be jailed, or you can be people can put sedition acts on top of you, right? That means
just because you said something.
Definitely, just because you said something. Okay, even though you're not directly inciting violence, but because it was influenced by your speech, you can still be put behind bars. That's effectively what that entire thing means. or like I'm ready to be challenged if somebody has another view. But basically, it's what means in the layman terms.
I mean, that's what happens in India right now.
Yeah. Okay. That is one of the biggest parting gifts that the Britishers left for Indians, and we are still struggling with that. Right? If you go and ask the government of India, hey, look, Lal Bahadur Shastri was the second Prime Minister of India, and he dies one day after signing the treaty with Pakistan. Okay, and he dies in Russia, like USSR. Back then, it was still USSR. There's no proper documents on how he died.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
his medical reports
same
were
with
forged.
same with Subhash Chandra Bose, right? There's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
proper document.
People actually believe that his flight crash was fake. He was never on the flight, and then he took a submarine route to Japan, and from Japan he went to Russia. There's also a theory that Lal Bahadur Shastri met Subhash Chandra Bose. He was going to return from USSR, and that's the day he dies. Okay. Now, if you go and ask these questions out in public, how many people will write public litigations against you saying that, oh, you hurt my sentiments. Why are you talking about Lal Bahadur Shastri? He was that, he was this. Subhash Chandra Bose that, Subhash Chandra Bose this. So, see, it's come to a point where if you make fun of Hindu culture, or if you make a criticism, let's not talk about fun, okay? Yeah, if you make fun of certain culture, it depends on the context, but if it's actually meant to hurt somebody's feelings, of course, he or she has to deal with certain consequences. But if you're criticizing a religion based on some of the hypocrisies that it stands for, right? You're still being charged with all these litigations. People are asking for your arrest. And that's how that freedom of expression or freedom of speech is not what do you say?
It's not really a freedom.
Absolute. It's not absolute.
Yeah.
There are some loopholes through which you can still get into trouble. Now,
True.
if I say, okay, fine, let's bring the First Amendment, right? Then even everybody gets a free pass. Now everybody will start making fun of each other, and nobody can do anything about it. So yeah, we're India is on a double-edged sword. It can neither continue with this false freedom of speech. It can neither go back to absolute freedom of speech. What do you think about it?
Can I even express my thoughts here freely?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
we'll decide later if we want to upload this.
Cool. So what my thoughts are that the conditions, all kind of conditions, okay, living conditions, basically living conditions in India, when we got our freedom, and when the constitution was written, were a lot different than they are right now. Okay, the conditions were a lot different. People's priorities were a lot different. That time, survival was the priority, not living a happy life, not living a great life, not when we have some of the busiest cities in the world, right? So that time, survival was everything, and the constitution was written, and it did well for us for a lot of, let's say, at least for the first 50 years, it did well for us, right? Because were we a developing country in 1945, or were we just a poor country?
We were the most advanced civilization until
there was a long time ago.
Or let's say at least till the Portuguese made landfall. So fine. Till 1857, India was really good. We still had a huge contribution for the world's GDP. We controlled over 1/3 of the entire GDP of the world. And until Britishers started deciding to, okay, fine, we'll create artificial famines and we'll plunder everything.
Cool.
So we had,
So when we got our freedom, we were, let's just put it in a way that developing, right? In the lower parts of developing. We're not highly fastly developing or moderately developing. We're just fine, okay, we're just developing, right? But I know we're still developing, but I think we've come a long way as a whole population, where survival is not something that we think of every time we get up in the morning. That's not something that comes to our head. That's something that's it's just a given now in this world, that at least in most countries, at least in maximum country, it's just given that every time a person wakes up, that's not what he has to think about. That's survival. Yeah, I'm going to survive it. It's fine. Nothing's going to happen to me. Nobody's there to kill me, right? And also, our culture, how drastic of a change do you think our culture has experienced since westernization? Fine, we don't want to name the culprits. Okay, they're not even culprits. They're just influences. The Western influence. All how drastic of a change do you think, if you rate it 1 to 10, 10 being the most drastic, 0 being like no change at all? How drastic of a change do you think has it been in the last 80 years, or the last, let's say, last 50 years in India?
We want
Culture.
to culturally how different we are from the last 80 years, like what we were.
Last six, let's say, 50, last 70 years, the years that matter after independence.
Okay. So see, right before independence, even though we had people who dictated us on what we can talk about, what we cannot talk about, how many people can gather at a place and how many cannot, right? There were still people who were going against it because we were being ruled by a foreign agent, right? People still had that, subconsciously they knew that they were still free. They had that free will, and they just wanted to, like, probably their way of gathering at a place was more, it was seen more like a violence, because obviously the oppressor wants you to look at it as a violent act, right? But right now, if you want to, let's say me and you want to protest about something, okay, let's for example say Akshay and Atish want to protest about gender pronouns, that they are fake. Okay, now if we go and stand on the road, right, the cops will come and pick you up. Okay, or
Possibly.
somebody will come and pick you, right?
Yeah.
You see the big difference? Now our own people are not letting us put up a counter argument, or they're not ready to even listen to us.
True.
Forget us. Okay. I think largely we're still the same. At least in the last 7 years, at least we've seen a big change. I think because India has been under a left-leaning party for so long, they've forgotten what it feels like to have an actual debate. Okay, maybe the debate that we are having with the right-wing party that's in power right now is a little discomfort for some people who've been, thinking that India is a utopian world that they're living under, right? It's not. Like, there's so many problems, so many civilizational problems that we have. We have our internal security at risk. People went nuts when they, suddenly saw like the Muslims were excluded from CAA and the citizenship stuff. It's a different argument, but you need to understand, like, people from other countries, from a belief system that originate in another place, which is not what do you say, a belief that is not originated from India, do not have, they don't necessarily have the best interest of the Indian state, right? The Union of India. And that's what pains some people. Some people can't digest that fact. They're like, oh, we are Vasudeva Kutumbakam, we're like one family, entire earth. Fine. Ask your neighbors to remove the borders, we'll do the same. Ask them to do it first, and we'll remove our borders, right? If Vasudeva Kutumbakam is relevant now, why don't you ask your neighbors to take off the fences first, right? So 70 years back, it was all chill because everybody had the same ideas, and those who were dissenting voices, they were put down by guns. Okay, like a bullet was put in their head and they were down. Now, since we have those people who had differences of opinion, like the guys who never spoke much before, now since they are louder, the left-leaning people are scared about their dominance being like pulled out from their legs, like a rug being pulled under them. Right? I see a shift. Of course, it's not a peaceful shift of culture that I'm seeing. Like, they're attacking each other on a personal level. They're not having a civilized conversation with each other. People are losing friends just because they have difference of opinion.
True.
We've seen that within our group itself. Twice it's happened. It's not a it's not a secret anymore. Everybody is losing friends just because they have a difference of opinion. Come on, your friendship, if you're calling somebody your friend, right, and you've been with them for more than 10 years,
Yeah.
I don't think one simple disagreement should be or could be a reason why you guys split up, right? So yeah, we're heading towards a place where people with differences of opinion can finally talk loudly rather than just sitting in a closed apartment. And that's one of the reasons why we are having this conversation, because uh, we can put up this on the net maybe in the future and have more people talk. Probably we can invite, but that's a different thing. But we want to make sure that somebody at least starts a conversation, right?
True.
So that's the thing. Yeah,
Okay.
that's how different it is 70 years back and now.
Yeah, I had some closing thoughts. One, I'd just start off with continuing to this. So what I wanted to put forth is that we're a very culturally diverse country, right? We've always been, and anybody could argue with me, but I'd say that our culture has been one of our biggest driving force in almost everything that we do. More than something being practical or something being monetary, it's been the culture that's been driving a lot of things that Indian people do, right? But what I would also say that since the early 2000s, which is when even we grew up, right, there was 5 minute huh. So what I'd say that since
Early 2000s,
yeah, since the early 2000s, since the years that we've grown up, I think everyone our age or someone who's a little older to us, and people, obviously everyone younger to us, we give lesser and lesser priority to what our actual culture is. And that's for certain reasons. And these are just personally my thoughts, okay? And the reason that we don't make culture our first priority when it comes to making decisions, big decisions, life-changing decisions, is because of first globalization. We've come to know a lot about the not Western, we've just come to know a lot about everyone else in the world and how everything behaves. And now survival and culture are not the biggest factors that drove everything in India, right? Now everything is about what an individual is going to do in his or her life, and how they're going to go about their life. And how they go about their life has nothing to do with how they were brought up, where they were brought up, and what they're going to do. Anyone can change however they live at any point in their life, go anywhere in the world, live there, settle there, right? So what I'm saying is, everyone, our generation, let's just say our Gen Z, at least, uh, we our decisions are not biased by culture anymore. And I'm talking about people exclusively, I'd say, living in I'd say that when at least when I wake up, I don't think about, oh, I'm Hindu, or I'm this or I'm that, and I need to do this, or my people. Like, I think the forward that we move in human civilization as a whole, the Westerners have already moved to that point. We will eventually move to the point where we won't give a damn about anyone around us apart from a select few, 4 or 5 people who are very close to us. And that's all our life's going to be, instead of what an Indian's life was 20, 30 years ago, where their society, their culture was everything to them, and they would even die for them. They would make a lot of decisions to support their society. They would never leave their society. They would go as far as marrying also in their society to stay in the society, right? All of these things are changing. And because of this, and because of the globalization, and mostly the internet, right? Because internet's made everything just so transparent now. And internet's made it very, very easy for even the quietest person in the room to put his or her thoughts out in means other than video or audio. There's something called text now, and people can write. So even that's why even the quietest people can put their thoughts out and stir up an argument without having to like stay up in front of a camera or stand in front of an audience, right? That's why as you said, that even people who were not that outspoken are still getting to what they wanted to, getting what they wanted to out. Right now,
Yep.
there's a lot of arguments to be made that I think 99% of people's opinion in India or across the world are decided by what kind of video they've watched that previous week, political video, and which side they prefer at that point, not really their own generic thoughts, like their own genuine thoughts after carefully examining the whole situation, because nobody's got the time for it, because as I said, that everyone's more invested into their own lives and not really the political landscape anymore, right? That
Yeah.
okay.
So there are some, I have some disagreements with some of,
Yeah.
like I think 2 sentences, but
Hmm.
that we can put it up for another video. But see, why most Indians don't like to talk about politics is A, they don't have enough time.
Exactly.
As in, like, they think that it doesn't affect their day-to-day life, right? In the short term, like how does one chief minister talking about something affect me right now or for tomorrow? Because
Doesn't.
every Indian is like, I'm going to live today, that is guaranteed. Am I going to live tomorrow? Is it like is my life going
I'll
to be
find out
threatened
tonight.
if tomorrow? I'll find out tonight.
Yeah.
Like if some chief minister is going to talk about nuking his city, then probably then I have to be careful about what he's going to talk. That's only when, like, if
Yeah.
my life is threatened by some guy in power, if my life tomorrow is going to be threatened by a person who's talking today, and that person has the power to do something about it, then I'll listen to him, right? But if all that, if if majority of our Indian politicians are just barking every day, right? It doesn't matter. Like I've seen you being, so disappointed in politics that you've considered yourself, bro, I'm a realist. I'm not leftist, rightist,
Yeah.
or a centrist. I'm a realist. आज क्या होगा, कल के लिए क्या होना है, बस. I don't care what these guys make in a 5-year plan.
No,
10-year plan.
I care about the future, but the way our politicians think, which is basically like a 2-year-old, I don't think these people have the power to affect what happens in 5 or 10 years unless someone smart speaks of anything. So, and that's why. So this is the reason I don't care about anything they say, because all of these are just shit talkers basically, and everyone's got their own opinions. Unless someone's making a giant decision for the country, which I can quantify is going to change something in the next 5 years, then I'll probably give a damn about it. But all of these daily arguments happening every day because China moved the border by 1 feet or something like that. I know I don't treat it as a big deal. Some people do, which is completely fair. And but yeah, I don't think all of these small things is going to change the world for me or for like the 1 point whatever billion people that we've got.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got to end this video, but I also just wanted to bring up Squid Games again because thumbnail. Anyway, I'm kidding. But so as we just discussed, right, that it was probably a power move by them. I mean, we discussed if it was a power move for them using an Indian character in the whole show, and you spoke about the talent and skill side of it, but I wanted to bring into light the cultural effect of it by in the sense that if I mean, I hope you've noticed, unless you've been living under a rock, that there was a movie called Extraction, right, which was using a Hollywood cast, but portraying it and like the atmosphere being in India, right? India or somewhere close to India.
Bangladesh.
They portrayed it in the way that it was in India. That's why a lot of people gave a damn about it. India,
No,
Bangladesh.
properly, like, yeah, they were
hardcore
in Dhaka for a while. They were
Yeah.
in Dhaka for a while, and like they shot some of the scenes which they weren't able to do it in Bangladesh. They shot in the closer city, like they just finished it.
So
see, yeah, but I understand what you're trying to get to. Yeah, continue.
So for some reason, which was obviously related to this, that the movie did extremely well, especially in India, right? It was also a global movie. It was not like it was made in Hindi, not like the actors spoke in Hindi, the actors spoke in English. It was a global movie. Everyone should have watched it. But where was the maximum population that watched it? It was Indians, right?
Yeah.
And I think Netflix, and I'm pretty sure the world has realized. I think Jeff Bezos already told that it's going to be an Indian century soon, and I think even Netflix has realized that content consumption wise, at least, let's just focus only on content consumption. We've got a huge audience because of the cheap internet and availability of mobile phones. And by huge, I mean like a massively big audience. Like, if I think India alone can account for a giant revenue for Netflix, I personally believe, even if five people are sharing the same account.
That's what I was going to come to. Dude, they were like, okay, fine, I'll give you an account. You pay just $200 per month. Okay, that is like the cheapest Netflix could have done, and still 5 to 6 people of us, like, we're carrying it. We have a timetable. Okay, you will use it at this time. I'll use it at this time. So yeah, me, Satvik, and Yanish did that, but it's okay.
Netflix is out to get you guys.
But we did that.
Yeah.
So I was using that account to watch Friends every afternoon, right? So during lunch, I watched 3 episodes. By the time my lunch time is over, and Nanesh was texting me like, "Bro, which idiot is watching Friends at this time?" Because he's also free, he's not able to watch.
Yeah.
And Nanesh didn't know it was me because Satvik kept it a secret, and like Satvik is not able to defend.
Yeah, and you obviously didn't tell it was you.
I didn't tell you. Why would I?
So that's the thing. Netflix doesn't know that 5 people are using it. One of those 5 people also does not know that there are 5 people using it. So and even then we're creating such a big revenue for Netflix. Just imagine the power that India will have in controlling the type of content Netflix makes when at least half the users use their own accounts. That'll be insane. So yeah, I just wanted to end with that I think an Indian being in a Korean show was not by accident, or not a very random thing. It was probably a very carefully calculated decision of putting an Indian. Yeah,
you mentioned that Netflix bought Squid Games, right, from the writers. So I think, do you think that there was Netflix's influence to add the brown person into the script, or
no,
the script was already made such a way, and then Netflix took full advantage of that?
Yes, definitely. They definitely did. But yeah, I don't even think he's Indian in that. I think he's Pakistani in that show. But I'm just talking about I'm just talking about a Hindi speaking person, right? But I think, forget Netflix. I'm just saying Squid Games itself, if they've designed a completely Korean show, it was not by accident that an Indian character was there. It was a carefully.
Let's say South Asian. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry. I said Indian. I'm just saying, yeah. South Asian character was there, and because I'm pretty sure all of these filmmakers have realized that we are a very big deal, and also from the Squid Games creators' perspective, a lot of Indians do watch a lot of Korean shows, right? So
yeah, especially the female audience. Oh my god.
Yeah, so even if the creators didn't sell their show to Netflix, no, they still did put that particular individual there to appeal to us in some way. I mean, yeah, Netflix has got a lot of things right on the cards right now, even though they had. Yeah, so I think we should end this episode right here, because as always, we spoke a lot more than we thought of. So, I mean, I think you can just proceed with some closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts. Okay. We learned a lot about, how Netflix was making power moves by representation, and also by playing the right cards in terms of, the social media phenomenon. Like, almost everybody is connected. So why not make people connect on an emotional level in terms of people watching TV shows? Like, everybody watches TV shows. It's just that they watch it at different times. The way they relate to a show is from different, like it's so unstructured. And by releasing a show like Squid Games, which is actually entertaining in multiple languages on the same day, so that everybody watches it real time or like in the same time frame. Right. So, for example, let's talk about let's see your friends, right? People who watched the show when the show was actually released, they actually admire it because there was so much of freedom in terms of what kind of jokes can be made and cannot be made. Then there is people like you and me who enjoy that kind of comedy, but also know that okay, somewhere they cross the lines on some of the topics. And then there is now the woke culture who's like, oh, Friends is very toxic show to watch. There's so much of difference just because there's a time gap of how many people watched it in that 10 years span. But in Squid Game, it's not like that. Everybody, yes. So now almost the majority of the audience have watched it in this 1 week time span or maybe 2 weeks of time span when it was launched. That removes all these negative press it would have received if somebody
for
had
now. For now.
Yeah.
It depends what happens 10 years from now.
Yes. So this is a social experiment, I think, from Netflix. Let's see down the line how bad it goes or how amazing this power move was.
A giant money monster making social experiment. But yeah, they did pretty well. And honestly, the show is really nice. I mean, I've watched 2 episodes, but I can already know.
Even I'm still stuck over there. I'm yet to complete it. Apart from that, we spoke about discipline when you are having a discourse. Right? And how it's important for at least Indians to start learning how to debate and how to have a disciplined argument with your fellow mates, especially when you're doing it with your friends.
Right.
And the kind of ideological shift that's happening in India right now, and the fact that the ideology that was sustained for almost 70 years is being challenged by a ideology that was less loud. Right? I wouldn't say they were silent. They were less loud. Maybe in the 2000s, they were pretty loud because of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He was sitting on the prime minister's post. But back then, it was a coalition government. He didn't have much power. Like I wouldn't say not much power, but yeah, he had the backing of people who actually liked him, but it was not enough, right? He couldn't make the right moves. And now that Modi is here, and he's here to stay for like another 4 years, maybe.
Probably more than that.
Because we don't, honestly speaking, we don't have a replacement.
We don't. That's the thing. He'll
the only other
guy until he dies. Who do we have to?
Yeah. I mean, we have Yogi Adityanath, but he needs a little more experience.
No,
I want. Dude, Yogi Adityanath. See, I'm not talking about the saffron culture. I'm talking about who can actually protect our boundaries. Okay, who can actually stand up to Trump and say "fuck you." We need such kind of leaders.
Trump's gone.
Who can say "fuck you." Trump is going to come back. I want him back, bro. I'm tired of Biden. I'm tired of petrol prices. I want Trump to come back and like say, Iran, bro, you better send oil to India and make sure that Atish is satisfied or I'm going to nuke you. You better do it. I want that kind of leaders who can actually make changes. Okay, I don't want puppet prime ministers like Manmohan Singh or someone else. So yeah, that. So that's the closing thoughts on this episode.
Cool. Let's start with something very fresh the next time we do, which is tomorrow.
Yes.
So yeah. Cool. Nice conversation, Atish. I had a great time.
Thank you.
Sorry for all the interruptions in between, which all of your audience won't know about because it's been cut off. Alone. How much goes into making these?
I mean, not much comparatively.
I have to clean my kitchen.
We don't have brand endorsements from Harpic and Clean and all. Look at how wide our tabletops are.
Yeah.